I have a very strong microbiology background, so I tried to preface myself like I'm of sound mind and body. I said, Dr. Group, I believe they've weaponized our microbiome against us. And I believe that E. coli and yeast are manufacturing hybrid organisms inside of us. And I hope you don't think I'm crazy. And he just smiled and winked at me and said, well, I believe you're right.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Leila Show. We have Maria on here with us today, and I call her the Parasite Queen. Maria, can you give us a brief introduction, who you are, what you've been up to for all these years? I first noticed you on a podcast, actually, a YouTube video, where you had an incredible PowerPoint presentation that you were going over with someone, and I was like, oh my God, I must meet this lady like yesterday. And fortunately, I had some contacts that knew you, and then next thing you know, we were on a phone call having a great conversation. So I give you the floor, Maria.
Sure. So I am a clinical research scientist. And so what that means is most of my work was from a pathology lab. That was most of my training. I taught college microbiology for a short stint, and I ended up very early on in my career opening up my own pathology lab. And funny, when I was in college, I never thought that I would ever have to visit parasites again because gross. But it's funny how the world turns and brings you back to center. And a lot of what has been happening over the past 6 years, I have been documenting. And we have some common friends. I am the lead transhuman researcher now for the Global Wellness Forum, and use a lot of my microscopy and research to help influence awareness. We could put it that way, influence awareness, and make sure that administrations are moving in the right direction to protect the people and do right by the people. So I'm very much a freedom fighter. I have had to be reintroduced to parasites in a way that I never thought would happen. Wow. So, and now anymore, we're dealing with biosynthetic parasites, and I call them the GMO'd parasites. And apologies for these things that keep popping up, but the GMO parasites, right? The things that are biological and synthetic. So we have the organics that we're used to seeing that we can talk a little bit about. And then I'd really like to dive into the inorganics, including the frequencies and their effects on the biosynthetics and the complete inorganics that we're being assaulted with. Yes. I've done work on the Florida fog. I've done work on different products, medications. I've also done work on the Wyoming snow, and have contributed to the anti-geoengineering projects across the states. Wow. So this is all, it's been really busy. You can imagine. And honestly, it's a puzzle that a lot of us are trying to put together. And it's a shame that we even have to do it, right? Because these are not things that we consented to.
Exactly. Wow. Yeah. Amazing. Incredible. And I had no idea you were part of this amazing organization that I'm also helping as well. So I love it. And, Dr. Group is on our show, and I've interviewed Sayer G already. So this is fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. So thank you for being here with us.
Thank you. Dr. Group was instrumental, and he and I have worked closely together for a couple of years now. And thankfully, he's such a humble, awake human being, as is Sayer. And he insisted on a transhuman council because he knew years and years ago what was coming. Wow. Very, very awake, and then trusted me enough to purchase the equipment that I currently use, which was not inexpensive. The retail price for just the Echo behind me with all of the gadgets that we have attached to it was around $55,000.
Wow.
And his company does a lot of great work for humanity,
Mm-hmm.
and he had the insight and the foresight to know that we were going to need special equipment. So
Wow.
we then advanced and purchased a scanning electron microscope as well. So that
Wow.
was really cool, because I didn't get to learn how to use one of those things when I was in college. Our some of our equipment was massive. Can you imagine what
Yeah.
a scanning electron might have looked like back then? They were just getting started. So
Wow. I can only
yeah,
imagine. And so
all the
basically, you
special
can
training.
see everything.
Mm-hmm.
And you're also
I,
able to see the impact of frequency on whatever is in that you're looking at.
Yeah, so with a scanning electron, it has to be something that is still, not in motion, and the sample preparation is entirely different. So or you can harm the beams. It is like an X-ray.
Mm-hmm.
So I do have images of things like hydras that are pretty insane,
Wow.
and where I was able to get elemental ID on
Wow.
them.
All right, let's do this. I'm so excited.
Okay, so I gave this presentation. I'm going to go between a couple different presentations,
Mm-hmm.
because there's great information in all of them, and it all leads up to the here and the now. So a couple of years back, I gave this presentation on raising our frequency via organic and synthetic parasitic remediation. And basically, what that means is we want to deal with total human health potential, which I know you're very accustomed to. So we aim to try to get people to a place of their ultimate health potential. We cannot do that unless we raise the frequency and the electricity of ourselves, of our internal environment.
Yes.
And you cannot do that without remediation,
Mm-hmm.
especially with all of the lovely gifts of poison that we currently have.
Yes.
So we don't have to go into this. This is just some background, some scientific studies about some things that were being done to people in the UK, in the United States. But what I like to do is talk to people about what they believe parasites are.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, people believe that parasites are simply worms, right? There's all kinds of different types, thousands and thousands of species of different types of parasites. I have looked at different eggs. They're very difficult to tell the difference between what type of eggs you're dealing with based on their maturation progress. Basically, their cycle of life, where they're at, and where they're located in the body. What's really hard now, though, is that there are biosynthetics that are present in the intestines that are really driving the organic, different types of eggs, cestodes, nematodes, prokaryotes, all these different types of parasites, driving them deeper into the body, not in a normal niche or habitat where you would normally find them. So it's getting identification. It's making things even more difficult, right, for people.
Right.
Also, because we don't have a great standardization anymore. Most of our reference material is based on books that are 20 to 30 years old. So you have great black and white images, not necessarily colored images, which I'm capable of seeing now.
Wow.
So the ID is even more difficult, because you have to look for the tiniest of characteristics to try to ID an egg, which I don't really waste my time doing. If I know they're there, they're there, and that is enough. And I know how to get rid of them.
What do you say to doctors that are watching this show, even functional medicine doctors, because I've heard it from them, that parasites don't exist in the US? It's a third world problem. What do you say to these guys? Because I had one tell me to my face, even though I showed him a 9-inch worm that came out of my 5-year-old. What do you say to them?
So, in all honesty, I take this approach, and it's a lot the way that I approach academia. Not trying to be offensive, but I simply walk away and say, I hope that you're happy with your symbiotic relationship that you currently have with your parasites. And eventually that symbiosis is going to turn to poison for you. Yeah. So it really honestly doesn't matter to me, but I have seen people, as I know you have as well, through remediation, remove their inflammation, remove their joint pain, remove their tumors. So I would just simply say, I think you need to get re-educated and try to open your mind to something that you don't currently already know, that you didn't learn in school because you've been taught wrong.
Yeah, and the way I understand it is the reason they were taught parasites don't exist in the US is because the pharma wants this to turn into something way worse, which eventually turns into cancer or all these different diseases, Hashimoto's, you name it. And that's where the moneymaker begins for them. However, if you stop it at an early age or prevent it by doing your parasite cleanses, you'll never hit that point, which means it could be a problem for their business, for their industry, if the world knew to do parasites more frequently, which is what was happening before Rockefeller came in the early 1900s.
It's a fact.
So if we go back to a little bit of history and you go back to the text from the 1800s where real medicine was being performed, natural medicine, it was very common knowledge to know that people need to do these parasite cleanses, otherwise they will take over your body eventually.
Yeah, and here's the other thing is now more than ever, it is critical for people to do, because now what we have is we've always had intracellular and extracellular parasites. Okay. What do we think is going to happen to a cell, a host cell, like a red blood cell or a white blood cell, whenever nanoparticles have gained entry into the cell? And I can prove this. Have gained entry into the cell. And these are inorganic metals. They're coated most of the time with silicon shells, but they are inorganics. And what do we think? Parasites anchor and they thrive in an acidic environment, and that includes intracellular. They use the host's systems, so they use the host's chemicals and feed off of things like our glutathione for their own redox capacity. And what do those doctors think is going to happen? When we have now this influx of nanoparticles that are coming inside of the cell, right? So the cell can't even defend itself now, and allowing for intracellular parasites to proliferate. It is a serious problem.
So basically, the chemtrails, the stuff that is being sprayed from the skies, has been produced in a way that it's inside your cells and you can't just naturally get it out, detox it on your own, like maybe you could have 100 years ago.
It doesn't work that way
It's like
anymore.
a true bioweapon.
Yeah, it's a true bioweapon. You're not going to take cilantro and parsley and, try to diet your way out of this. It doesn't work that way, especially when they're inside of the cell.
Wow.
So, and we can see the breakdown under the microscope whenever we're doing, live cell analysis and then aging blood and looking at it. You can start to see that once the cell itself starts to die, then you see the seeping or the leakage of the intracellular parasites that come out to play.
I did some live blood analysis myself a couple years ago. And that's exactly what I saw. When she would let the slide sit for 20 minutes, literally these little worms would crawl out of my cells.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And back in the old days, I was taught, I call it on the bench. So the way I was trained, and this was, college for me was decades ago, but we always had to pass, verbal dissertations and go through immunology and pass different departments in a pathology lab. This is the way we were trained. And that included some live cell analysis, staining urine, all kinds of different blood, making blood products, all of these things, right? And the quizzes were intense, they were difficult, but the way we used to be taught was that you were used to seeing things in a clinical setting and things that were normal for cell biology. Reactivity of cells was normal. What's really difficult now with the bioweapons that are being used and the synthetics that are being in the GMOs that are being used against us, right? With the biosynthetic parasites, what's happening now is that A lot of these microparticles and nanoparticles, they have their own programming. Okay.
Yeah.
So what happens is by design, they are directed to perform a specific procedure or build a certain, call it antenna or biosensor or whatever it is that they're programmed to build, a hydrogel. And we are looking at cellular reactivity and saying, okay, is this, am I looking at a fibrin reaction? Am I looking at, some sort of advanced response in the clotting cascade? Am I looking at something that's normal, or is there adsorption happening within fibers that are causing them to be electric now? What in the heck am I looking at? So nothing is as it was. But what I can also tell you is that human beings, it looks to many of us as if human beings are being turned into synthetics. Wow. Because there are the presence of synthetic red blood cells because of these GMO'd bioweapons. They also have the capacity to enter into parasites and use their own programming.
Wow.
So what are they constructing? This is really a massive topic.
Wow. And what would you say to the people who, of course, I have my wellness center, and we are very much into strengthening the cell membrane. We do, PC oils, PCIVs, but as part of our protocol, it is always to do parasite cleanses as well. Mm-hmm. There are other wellness centers and other practitioners that say, listen, all you need to do is strengthen the cell membrane and strengthen your immune system. You don't need to worry about parasites then. Parasites will just disappear. And I'm like, that's not possible with the amount of toxins and the amount of bioweapons that our body is being introduced to. Yes, maybe that worked 20 years ago, but things have changed. Yeah. What would you say to them, to the practitioners, the holistic guys, the alternative guys that have decided to not look at parasites, even though they know they exist, but they say, just strengthen the immune system, just strengthen the cell membrane, and you don't need to worry about parasites? What would you say to them?
So this is great. I actually have a slide on that, but where it talks about trying to expand your definition of what a parasite means to you. Because like I said, they're stuck in the old school way of thinking as well, not just of practicing. So even, more so maybe than newer graduates, because, at least back in the day, we were taught, if you're going to go into and do any kind of a surgery or an anesthesia type of procedure, or even if you're going to receive any type of dental anesthetic, right? Even a local. Back in the day, we were actually trained that you do a parasite cleanse before and you do a parasite cleanse after, because any type of an anesthetic, whether it's in your mouth or, full body, or a local into a joint or an area, what parasites do is they see this as a potential death wish for them, right? So they know that their host is numb, something's happening. They go into a fight or flight type of response, and for the worms, they will actually dump all of their eggs in one setting.
Wow.
So that will happen during a colonoscopy. They'll dump all of their eggs. The larvae dig deeper into the intestine, into the, breaking down the intestinal wall. And these are things that are done, routinely. It's like every time I see somebody go in for a colonoscopy, I think, I bet you didn't do a parasite cleanse before, and I bet you're not going to do one after, but the proliferation is real. And this is how parasites work. They've been around longer than we have. Yeah. They're not stupid.
They're very smart. And the man-made ones are smarter.
Correct. And for those who don't believe that you have to do any type of cleansing, again, I say, well, good luck with your parasites, because this is real. And now we have intracellulars. It's not enough to try to strengthen your cell membranes. It's simply not. So let me get through so we can get to some of the really good stuff. Parasites and bacteria, of course, they have immune modulatory defense mechanisms. Of course they do. Whenever we have an immune response and we spill out cytokines, so do they, but they use our cytokines against us. So they use our own inflammatory processes to proliferate. So whenever white blood cells, macrophages, they can't come to the scene of the crime, that's a problem because the parasites will actually use those inflammatory cytokines and inflammation processes to further proliferate. So they even know how to use our own defense mechanisms against us, right? And they have all kinds of ways to avoid host recognition, all kinds of ways. This is something that I love this picture, even though it's gross. This was from
Don't worry, I love gross photos.
Yeah. And this actually is a trichomonas. And it's difficult sometimes to tell the difference between a trichomonas and a giardia organism, but this is a, protozoa. But the difference is in the number of flagella that they have, and then the number of, we call them eyes that they have. So this one is a trick, but I'm able to use fluorescence microscopy with my particular equipment and make a beautiful picture, even of something that's really disgusting. And then this is an Ascaris lumbricoides. This is a roundworm, just a basic roundworm. When I talk about the fact that worms will lay eggs and they will spill everything in their capacity up to a couple 100,000 at a time. If you have a tapeworm or a roundworm, anytime they feel assaulted, they will dump their eggs. This came out of someone's sinus cavity.
Wow.
Yeah. During remediation, we've actually had women report losing them from their uterus in their periods, from their labia, just during remediation. Wow. So,
and the other thing is too that I try and tell people, because a lot of people are afraid of pain, and I'm like, yes, it does hurt. It doesn't feel great to release these parasites. I remember I had one episode, I felt like there was a knife that was going straight into my stomach. These buggers are strong. They don't want to let go. They do it on purpose, so you stop what you're doing.
That's exactly right.
And I'm like, if you stop, they won, right? Yeah. And just so many people are afraid of the pain. And I'll never forget crying. I had tears coming down my eyes. I'm laying on the bed. I'm bundled up in a ball. And my husband is like, are you okay? I'm like, no, I feel like I'm going to die, but I know something is about to release. So I will get through it. And I went to the toilet. I wish I would have saved this photo because I have so many good ones. And there was a ball of eggs and worms wrapped up into one. It was so disgusting. But after that, the pain was gone.
Right. And
but it was like they were trying to stop me. They were trying to stop me from doing whatever it was that I was doing,
Right. And people don't understand that about detoxing, is that you can go into a sad spiral. You can go into an emotional spiral. But what we can promise the audience is that once you get rid of it, there is such a liberation that happens. You will not believe the absence of pain once it's there, meaning, chronic pains, joint pains, digestive issues. You cannot imagine the brain fog that leaves your body, the joint pain, all of it. All of a sudden your autoimmune diseases are a little bit different than they once were. Yeah.
100%.
So the other thing that they do is they can secrete these venom allergen proteins. And, when we talk about how intelligent these things are, they have adapted over centuries, no doubt. Nematodes are roundworms, cestodes, tapeworms, or segmented worms, and then trematodes, things like flukes. But these venom allergen proteins, they secrete, and they can feel like a burning. It's a different type of a defense mechanism, but this initiates their feeding, modulates the host immune system, facilitates their own adaptation, helps to proliferate and be a chronic infection for the host. Also contained in plant helminths. That's the other thing, is people don't understand why it's so important to wash everything that you eat. Yeah. So, like anybody else, I like to go out to eat once in a while. But I also know when I have a salad, I'm ingesting probably, 1,000 parasites. Mm-hmm. And that's just a given. They don't just exist in animals. They don't just exist in humans. They're literally everywhere.
Everywhere.
So
Everywhere.
it is really important for you
To
to
avoid it.
either be on sort of a constant, good behavior cleanse, maintenance at the very least, as well, so that they don't proliferate, right? Because you'll ingest them, they'll go into small intestine, and then it's just a feeding frenzy, right? But anyways, they can secrete their own antioxidants to avoid being tagged by reactive oxygen species for termination. This is how smart they are. They have their own immune response, right? So this is really funny, but I know for a fact that they don't like cilantro, that the eggs will take this up and die immediately. They also don't like clove. They take it up and they will die immediately. So I have my own essential oils spray concoction that I have part hardwood and part carpet in my home. And I actually spray that. I have pine needle and clove and cilantro essential oil spray that I use throughout my home.
Wow.
And I do that a couple days a week.
You sell this stuff too, right?
Yeah, you know what we did?
Something I could potentially sell on my wellness center?
Potentially. It's super easy. And, some people can make that at home, but the Paratrex 2 product that I helped with Dr. Group helped formulate. So this is a microsomal. It gets deeper. I'm just going to tell you a really quick story. There's a woman.
Is it out yet, by the way?
It's out.
Oh, great.
There's a woman who has off and on Lyme's disease. And so through her entire life, she's, probably around 55, 65 years old. Throughout her entire life, she has, gone off and on of different types of cleanses. This particular protocol that I use on my website is probably the most aggressive, most advanced, strongest protocol in the history of the universe for all different types of organics and inorganic parasites. And I put it together in such a way that I brought forward the very best products that I have found through the years testing. And I don't care who makes them. I'm bringing them on, right? It doesn't matter to me who's producing them. But the one in particular, the microsomal toxin binder and Paratrex 2 from Global Healing, I added that in part because we were targeting not only the organics and the inorganics, but also those rope hybrids that are in the intestines.
Wow.
So this is really strong. This particular woman, she's done tons of cleanses. She actually told me yesterday and this morning, she woke up, she's on beginner protocol. She woke up with her eyes basically sealed shut both mornings. And she said, I don't think that I have ever experienced anything this strong. Feels really good, but definitely having detoxification symptoms, right? And she's been on a lot.
Wow.
So this one I tested myself personally over about a year and a half.
I remember when you were doing the testing with Lori. Yes, I remember.
Yep. And getting that testing accurate and making sure that we could have a broad spectrum solution that would go deep into the lungs, the brain, the organs, and really make sure that we were grabbing everything that we could.
Okay, so I've done everything as well. I am so excited. Will you send me the recipe? I will call Dr. Group because I just spoke to him last week. He didn't tell me the new one was out. So if you can, as soon as this call is over, send me the recipe. I will jump on it myself. Can I get my kids on it, or is it too strong for them?
So I'm not allowed to say, right, that we can help with kids, but I can tell you that everything is natural.
Yes.
So it will be.
We'll talk offline. Let's talk offline. Yes.
Yeah, individual parent. But I give this to my dogs.
Okay.
My dogs go through and use the Paratrex 2 and the toxin binder every single day.
Great.
Because they're outside.
I've given my kids the regular Paratrex. The regular toxin binder. They also have done the beginning phase of cell core at least 3 different times because, as you know, our whole family was super infested from the mold and our terrain was just a disaster. So, I've done all that. I'm just saying, is it too strong for the version 1 that I've done, or if it's the same, then it's not a problem. I can do it. Okay, all right, then I'm going to do it again. Yeah.
And
because my kids are tough too. They take the nastiest stuff.
They're pretty awesome.
They are.
for the human beings, we'll just say, instead of aging them, right? So with the human beings that don't necessarily love the taste of Paratrex 2,
Yeah.
some people like to rub it on their feet. You can
Mm-hmm.
also put it in the belly button. There's
Mm-hmm.
different ways.
Yeah.
Totally. I mean, I have no reservations about using anything natural that I can to try to combat this.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, you can
Okay.
also put it in a little bit of orange juice, right?
Yep. You can do all of that.
It waters down
Yeah.
the taste a lot, or put some honey in it. Well,
There's a lot.
I can't wait to get it. I'm excited about it.
Yep. Yep. It's pretty strong
I'll
and I
send you some
love it.
photos.
Okay. Okay. Um, but this was really interesting. This little slide, anandamides. This is something that I use. Anandamides prevent calcium signaling, and I use Insulis product for that. And I use something, Echinacea purpura is an anandamide, alkymide anandamide, and I use that to access the CB2 receptors. And what's really cool is I'll use that at the same time as I'm using like Paratrex 2 because it's also microsomal. Dr. Group produces that for me. And what ends up happening is you're pulling glucose and you're normalizing your glucose in your system, right? So that the worms aren't using it. And you don't have that big inflammatory response that happens maybe after you eat or just in general, right? From environmental, exposure. But I use that with the Paratrex 2 because I can access the CB2 receptors in the brain, in the lungs, in the gut, everywhere pretty much, all over the body using this microsomal. And then I can help deliver the ingredients exactly where they need to go.
Wow.
Different organs, including the brain. So I'm very crafty about the way that I use certain products because I know how they were developed and how deep they were meant to go and how they actually work.
Love
And
it.
so whenever people just go and they take supplements, it would be really smart for people to, sit down, study the product, the mechanisms of action as much as they can, go to microsomal.com, for instance, and learn a little bit about the delivery system. So then you can tailor anything else that you're taking and really use it more effectively. That makes sense.
And what I love about Dr. Group and his products at Global Healing is they're so clean and he's so meticulous about every ingredient and he tests his suppliers. He really holds people accountable, and that's just such a big deal this day and age.
Yeah.
You can have the best intentions, but if you're not testing your suppliers, you don't really know exactly what you're getting.
It's a fact. And with the nanoparticles and everything, we have looked at so many different products, including our own, and I include Ed in that, with Global Healing and everything. With these nanoparticles, it is impossible to keep nanoparticles out of the raw material delivery systems. Nobody can do this. It's just not possible. What's difficult is that these nanoparticles then create larger structures. And that's really difficult. So even as much as we're all testing and trying to do everything that we can, just a caution for everybody, it's really impossible for us to keep all of this out of our system. So the best thing for all of us to do is to continuously detoxify our bodies.
Yeah.
Right. Because the raw material industry is completely infested. I mean, it really is. So the big basics, right? We try to keep the coliforms out. We try to keep the heavy metals out and things like that. But nanoparticles, impossible.
You're just not going to keep it out.
There's nothing you can do.
No, I agree.
Right. So you can't even starve yourself because you're going to breathe it in the air anyway.
Exactly.
So
that's what I tell people is we don't need to walk around and be in fear. We don't need to be paranoid. We don't need to not live. You just need to do the right thing to strengthen your immune system and detox this stuff out. But you have to detox the right way. That's the key.
Correct. And be a partner with your body.
Yes.
And that's also what we teach people is your body is under assault all day, every day, not an exaggeration. The liver's under assault, which I know, Ed talks about a lot, always under assault. Your main clearance, right, for detoxing your blood plasma, this is your liver and your kidneys.
Yeah.
And once one of those goes down, you're in big trouble and there will be a point of no return.
Yeah.
So for all those doctors out there, and now we have new assaults, right? We have hydrogels, we have antennas, and I'll go into this next so that we can, so that we can get to some really big, good stuff.
Yes.
But just for your audience, resveratrol, I found to be the most potent natural VAL blocker.
Wow.
So what that does is that's going to help stop proliferation.
Wow.
And that's something that I don't even sell. I don't even, just find a good resveratrol.
Oh.
And you can stop these the venom proteins.
Wow. I just met somebody recently that's got a great resveratrol. I'll share it with you afterwards because we're probably going to be selling it at our wellness center.
Yeah, great. The predators and the poisons, again, for those physicians who maybe don't want to look outside of the box. Back in the day, my business partner is a radiologist, and she went back to her old books, and she's like, why are they not teaching us, all of these things? You can literally see the cysts in the brain, and they're parasites. They're actually parasites, right? We've known that multiple sclerosis is a parasitic migration, right? From the spinal fluid into the brain. And that you can get this is why these lesions pop up everywhere. And it doesn't stop there. So and then you actually have to expand your definition. There are all types of parasites now. There's EMFs that contribute to the GMO yeast and the GMO E. coli that are proliferating those ropes inside of the intestines. You hit a certain signal and it makes them go absolutely and crazy, and they start replicating like mad. And we have the research on this, right down to the hertz, that are used.
Yeah, the 5G.
The 5G, the 6G, probably 10G by now, to be honest with you. We're just not being told. But, your satellites, your cell phones are definitely a bioweapon. You can look at federal governments, agencies, and bureaucracies as predators and parasites, right? Functional hydrogels, which I'm going to show you, different types of polymers, quantum dots, quantum biosensory devices, all of these things. And then, of course, I dive into interdimensional as well here and there, but we can talk about that another time.
Wow. That's another episode. We'll do a full episode.
Another episode. This is just an example
real quick, before you do this, I want to back up just a little bit to the liver and the kidney. So I often explain to people, like, why do you think that you can own a car and not do an oil change? And so a lot of people neglect doing liver flushes, gallbladder flushes. Yeah. What do you say to the people or to the functional medicine doctors that say, you don't need to clean your liver? If you just keep your immune system strong, your liver will do its work. What do you tell them, and give us the science and the research behind what is happening to the liver as these toxins keep going and building, and how they go pretty deep into the liver, and without doing a strong liver flush, you'll never get it out. How can you explain that in your scientific terms?
Yeah. So probably my approach would be this, and I would say, that the gallbladder is a receptacle, and it also produces bile. And the liver sits just above. So the gallbladder just sits right below. This is just anatomy, right? Anatomy and physiology. And I would say, how is it that the gallbladder gets frequently full of stones? And how is it that so many people are having to get their gallbladders removed because of stones? Because it happens all day, every day. This is one of the most prevalent surgeries that is performed in the United States.
Yes.
And usually I would get a stunned look, deer in the headlights. Well, people's diets and, things like that, right? No, physically, where are the stones coming from? Because the gallbladder does not produce these stones. The gallbladder does not produce these stones. They're actually liver stones. They're made up of the exact same materials. I've analyzed both. Liver stones are gallbladder stones. Women have a 35% increased risk of having liver stones after pregnancy.
Wow.
How many functional medicine practitioners will tell you that? But if you study Ayurveda, or you work with physicians, say in India, who have old school practices and they actually know the truth, or, some of these practitioners that, I worked with in India for a couple of years, and And these guys were very, very knowledgeable, and they practice an entirely different way, right? They practice prevention. But the liver stones will, once the liver is overwhelmed, they get deposited into the gallbladder. So the gallbladder is being removed for, a problem it didn't happen there, right? A crime it didn't commit, and then it's removed. And then you have a whole nother problem that you're going to have to deal with, right? With digestion. But the liver stones will originate in the liver, and there are blockages. I've removed thousands and thousands in my own liver. Used to be that I would have what I thought was an allergy to something like watermelon, or there were certain things that I couldn't eat because I just couldn't process it for some reason, or even like a cannabinoid, like a CBD, was a little bit harder on my liver, which is weird, right? I have as big of a liver as anybody else. I'm very athletic, right? I'm healthy. I have a great diet. What's the deal here? Is it because I'm part Native American? I really had no idea, right? Until I got through about 13 liver flushes. I have no problems, zero problems, right? And everything is cleaned out, including liver flukes. I know how to get rid of them. I use a thermogenic to get rid of them, and they come right out. So with different products, which, we can go over offline and everything, but this stuff is real. So for the practitioners maybe who try to deny it, I'd say you need to do a couple of cleanses, go through my protocol if you're not afraid of the truth.
Another thing they're saying is the stones come out in your poop. You just can't see them. And I'm like, the stones are stuck in your liver. What do you mean they just come out in your poop? That's why you need the Epsom salt. You need these things to open it up, to flush it out.
Yeah, no, that's a fact. And we have, so, there was another gal that called me, her and her husband called me. I don't think I'd talked to them in probably 20 years. And she had her third baby, and they were getting ready to remove her gallbladder. They called me, and she was literally with IV in arm, no other choice. What are we going to do? Her husband calls me and says, that we're natural. Maria. Is there anything we can do? And I said, absolutely. X, Y, and Z. Took her home. She went home, right? And just went through about 48 hours worth of, a little bit of pain and dealing with it, and passed everything, still has her gallbladder.
Incredible. It happened to me, I went to the emergency room because I had a gallbladder stone, and I was able to get it out with an incredible liver flush. I used Dr. Hulda Clark's, and with the amount of stones that came out of me, I just would look at the toilet, and I couldn't believe what was coming out of my body. Right. And I tell people, like, when you don't do it, it's just going to build and build and build until your liver's not working. They remove your gallbladder. Your system is completely crashing. You cannot expect that it's going to come out on its own just naturally through the bowels, because it gets stuck and lodged in there.
Well, and the liver becomes overwhelmed. And then when you get hit with even more environmental toxins and DNA damage, from your cells, from electromagnetic frequencies, how is your biological system supposed to perform when it's overwhelmed with toxicity? Eventually, here comes a cancer diagnosis. That's what happens. Eventually, here comes intracellular parasites, extracellular parasites, migrations, stagnation, a lymphatic system that's just not moving.
I've been using Dr. Group's liver flushes now. Because the original one I did Hulda Clark, but he's got the Great Liver Cleanse. He actually has a package, and he makes it super easy and super simple to do. So, for somebody who's never done a liver flush, just to begin, how many would you recommend somebody start with? Because I know, some people, they need to do like 10 of them. But you have to space it out. You can't do them back to back unless you do an abbreviated version of one. But the intense one with Epsom salt, you need to space it out at least 3-4 weeks, right?
It depends on the person. We have such a toxic assault happening right now that this is a great question, because on the screen, you're looking at hydrogel. So you're looking at functional hydrogel in blood. And I'm my question for people is, how do you think your liver and kidneys are going to be able to deal with now this type of garbage to break this down? These are literally polymers, which people might associate with plastics, but think of polyethylene glycol, or think of something that is gooey,
Wow.
right? Think of something that's, these things can actually form computer interfaces. And this is what they're being used for, is to harvest from our blood. So how is your liver supposed to take this from right, and clean up your plasma, clean up your interstitial fluid, and also deal with all of the other things happening? So what we actually do is we do a very aggressive protocol. So we will have people do at least 2 to 3 liver flushes before they even start the parasitic flush,
Wow.
usually. And then what we do is we have them in between. We have them going after the parasites 3 weeks on, 1 week off. 3 weeks on, 1 week off. Mm-hmm. There's actually a beginner protocol that's maybe a 2 weeks on, 2 weeks mm-hmm. off. Mm-hmm. But on that week off, we ask that you do a liver flush, because everything that you destroy, your liver has to process. Mm-hmm. So a lot of these things are, you don't want things getting caught up. You want to keep all your systems open. Yeah. You want to keep your lymphatic system moving. We ask that people use vibrating plates every single day.
I love that.
Even if you can get one that's on Amazon. I personally use a power plate, and I use it every single day.
Yeah, we have those
right
too.
So the other thing that we do is we are big fans of salt. So we will use Baja Gold to prevent extra fluid from being, collected outside of the cells, so that you can really keep your lymphatic system moving. So, with lemon in the morning, that type of thing, where we're continuously doing something for the liver every day. And people are really responding and having great success with this. So if somebody has never done a detox before, sure, you might want to wait in between, and give them a little bit of recovery. But I have a family member that she did her first liver cleanse, has never done any kind of a parasite or liver cleanse in her life. And 2 days after she was finished with Dr. Group's liver cleanse, I want to do another one. I feel amazing. I can't believe this. I want to do another one right now. Wow. It's not as bad, as people think. Yeah. And, as long as you're doing, like I have people using my Insulis product, because glutathione and selenium are both in this product. And those are both major support for the liver as you're going through detox. It'll also take care of all the reactive oxygen species and everything that's being produced as a byproduct. Right. So we have them. We're pretty targeted about what we're trying to do, and do it the right way.
What about if somebody's their bowel isn't regular? Would you first want to make sure you get their bowel regular? You want to make sure that they're opened up, cleaning, or would you go straight to the liver flush to help open everything and move everything out?
To be honest with you, I don't even mess around. We dive right in, and your bowels will start to self-correct. The other issue with that is that because of those ropes that we both know about, you're really not ever going to get cleaned out until you start dealing with these guys.
Yeah.
Really.
But I was like, I thought I was losing my mind. Like, what is this? Am I seeing things here? And I remember sending you the videos and you were like, oh, yep, those are some big ones. But it's like, until you see it with your own eyes, you almost don't believe that it's real.
I have to tell you something about those. I have done, let's skip over to those because I want to show you something.
Okay, but then we'll go back though, because I want to see your other slides. And even if we have to do a part 2 of this, we will, because your information is so incredible. I don't want to miss out on any of it.
It's a lot. I go into the hydrogels, and then I've got the ropes down here. Okay.
Yeah, those bad boys.
So these guys, and
with the snake heads. Look at the snake head.
It's like a snake head.
Yeah.
So I dug up, there was one paper, and all I could find on these things. They don't have any parasitic taxonomy. They're not considered parasites. by definition. And the researchers back in around, I think it was like 2013, 2014, there's a group of PhD researchers in Florida, and they tried to tackle this because they couldn't believe what they were seeing. And because I believe this came out of one of them, and not these particulars, these were sent in from other people. But they performed electron microscopy on the samples.
I have chills.
Looks like snake skin, does it not?
Oh my God. I have chills
Right.
up and down my body.
So I'm going to tell you even more. So this came from their research. And this came from newer research. And this looks like a parasite egg, also looks like a plasmid. It could be either. But I dug and I did some more research. So this came out of a woman who was doing our remediation protocol. And this one, this was actually, I think, one of Lori's clients. And then I dug and dug because I knew that there was some sort of a reptilian DNA, right? Some sort of a snake DNA. But these particular ropes, as you know, they form like a polymer bubble on the really adult looking ropes. They form a bubble.
I've seen those bubbles, by the way.
Yes.
I've had those bubbles.
Yes. And so these you'll only see in a very mature adult rope hybrid. What I dug up is that the sidewinding snake actually has bubbles that are hidden by the ovary to protect the ova. They replicate the same way. So then what I did is I said, okay, here's these bubbles. You can't really, you have to cut them with a scalpel. They're that formidable. They're not classified as parasites by taxonomy. They do contain human DNA and RNA. There are hundreds to thousands of them. They have a proboscis that they anchor, I found. And the egg characteristics and consistencies that I found underneath these bubbles, this is what I photographed microscopically.
Wow.
These are eggs that are sitting underneath those bubbles. Pretty disgusting, right? They look like a reptile egg. They're very soft. Here's another picture. And
so for anybody watching this who says parasites and eggs are not real, there you go. Right in front of your eyes.
Do some really gross microscopy.
Wow.
And these eggs were sitting underneath that sac. And there were probably about 6 to 8 per sac.
Wow.
And somehow they replicate just like a sidewinding snake. They reproduce like a sidewinding snake.
Wow.
I wasn't sure if this was hatching, but this looks like it is hatching a proboscis. And I'm going to show you what that is. This is what it is. This is a proboscis.
Wow.
So I was able to capture this. These are, you know how sloppy these things are. Very, very difficult to photograph. Very difficult. And they're so sloppy. To actually find this was remarkable. And probably not an accident, but I believe this is how they develop. This is what I believe.
Wow. Just
from my own research. So all I have, because there's no standardization here, and I get criticized a lot of times by academia because of my approach. Well, my approach is there's no standardization, and I don't work for a university, so I don't have to follow your rules. I don't really care what you think.
And they're controlled by pharma anyway.
Exactly. So what I don't care what you think of me.
Wow.
This is how I approach things, is with common sense. Yeah. And this is where citizen researchers are extremely important, because we are not locked into a mainframe, tunnel vision. And that is basically where I came from. And I'm never going back.
Yeah.
Because it was complete brainwashing and manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
So, wow. I don't care. And then I was able to capture this. And this is on the interior of their skin.
Oh my God.
Then I was able to photograph the way they weave in and out. So this is just a bird's eye view. And then I was able to get their spine.
Wow.
So
Jeez.
I have a parasitology background. And in all of my research, granted, we didn't have the same type of microscopy when I went to college as what I have capability of now. But I've never seen a worm with a spine like this in my life, ever.
Wow.
This is a spine. I'll see if I have a close-up. Yep, here's the close-up.
Wow.
It's a spine.
Oh my God.
Yep. There's just another parasite over here, but yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that remarkable?
That is insane.
Yeah. So they have these they have Dr. Group and I were using a quantum AI tool. And this is something that's very, very different. This is not Chat GPT. And I was talking specifically about these particular ropes, these hybrids. And we know that venom, anti-venom, helps remediate them.
Mm-hmm.
We
nicotine?
know
the nicotine.
What's that?
The nicotine.
Not nicotine. That won't do it.
What
nicotine does is passive. So nicotine is like a passive type of a remediation where you're basically just blocking receptors.
Mm-hmm.
Right, ACE2 receptors. You're basically just, you have a higher affinity for a receptor. Yeah. That way that receptor is protected.
Yes.
Right. So it's more of a passive type of approach. Mm-hmm. These things, they do not respond to medications. They don't respond to antiparasitics. They do not. What you really have to hit them with is an alpha-terpene from a pine needle, which we use, from rosemary, from pine, all of these different things, because we know how to attack them, right? Mm-hmm. But we also use anti-venom type of thing, like a mimosa pudica root. Mm-hmm. So we can attack them that way. You also have to remove heavy metals. That's what Dr.
Group uses a lot.
Mm-hmm. You have to remove heavy metals.
He's using it in Paratrex too, right?
In Paratrex 2 is the terpenes. It's a terpene-based formula.
Okay.
But you will not be able to drag these out and remove that proboscis that I showed you without mimosa pudica.
So you're using a cell core for that.
I'm using cell core for that because they have a carbon-based technology. So what I'm doing right now is Global Healing has a very fine organic mimosa pudica that I'm testing. And I'm using a couple of different things with it, with oxygenizing it, as well as adding a carbon base to it with some ozonated charcoal, so that we can combine this and have a good type of mimosa pudica solution, so that we don't necessarily have to use cell core, or we have another option, right, that we know is organic.
Yes.
So that is in progress, and I'm testing that right against the ropes. But this is all very methodical, and we're doing our best, but we know how to get rid of them. But what's really wild is this quantum AI tool. I said, I found eggs. Okay. So you would think there would be like a male and female, but whenever other researchers approached this, they were able to grow these things in a jar, and they had basically what they thought was a live sample. They put it in a jar and it bubbled. So we can go here. Okay. So when they put it in distilled water, I believe it was, they were able to see these gas bubbles, start to rise. And it was like a gel, kind of like the Blob from the 70s or 80s or whenever that movie was. Mm-hmm. And they were able to grow these things, and they grew, and they just grew on their own with no food source. And so it makes no sense. So when I was talking to the quantum tool about the reproductivity and about the spiritual liberation that people feel whenever they remove these things, about the scales, about the venom component, about the proboscis, about, the spines, all of this points to, this is some sort of a hybridized, GMO'd something. Is it live? Is it not live? Is it, they grow, but we also know that so does a hydra. So a hydra is a synthetic organism. It is an organism and it grows. And I've ID'd this under the electron microscope, and it grows on its own, and it can't be destroyed because it's synthetic. So the quantum tool says this is reproduction through binary fission. So sort of like a eukaryotic cell will just keep replicating on its own, right? Says that this is how they reproduce, is through binary fission. And yet there are egg sacs present. So by definition, my mind is blown because we do see something that's semi-biological about this, but also not. Because they just
What do you do? What do you do if you can't kill it?
You remove them. You suffocate them and remove them. So the best way that we know how to do this is through the anti-venom, right? So the root of the Mimosa pudica, and through suffocation, getting them unburied from the walls, but then also because there seems to be some sort of a reptile component to them, we can actually hit them with those terpenes.
Wow.
And it will destroy them. But you have to, even, it is my hypothesis that even if you do destroy them with the terpenes, they don't release. So you actually have to have that gelatin from the mimosa to drag them out. You actually have to have both components.
Wow.
Because you saw that proboscis.
You've advanced a lot since I last spoke to you a year and a half ago.
Yeah. So it's really detailed research, because I thought to myself, no, you don't get to win. I'm smarter than you. I'm going to figure out a hypothesis that makes sense based on what I'm seeing. So what I do is I go after something, and then I go back and say, okay, how did it work? Why did it work? Because I try not to, even when I look under the microscope, I'm trying to look at the behavior without clouding my vision, right? I don't want to be led down a certain road. I want to see what I see. And then after I see what I see, I go back and I start digging. And I say, okay, this is why this makes sense. This is the only plausible explanation that I have for this. The quantum tool confirmed what I see in research, which is they are secreting venomous proteins inside of our body cavity.
Wow.
So these secretions are taking place to help disable our host systems. This is what valves do, right? The venom proteins. This is what they do. What that means for the organic parasites and the nanoparticles that we're being assaulted with right now is it is aiding and abetting the proliferation. Wow. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So for people that think that, okay, well, do I need to attack the nanotech, or do I need to attack, the intestinal parasites? And the answer is you're going to have to do both. You're going to have to do both. So the protocol for parasites that I came up with encompasses as much of all of these things as it possibly can to try to do all of this at the same time safely.
Wow.
Yeah.
And last time we spoke, you basically were saying that, you need many, many months on this. And I find that that's the hardest part with, getting the compliance. Right. So how do you handle the client that says, I can't do parasite cleanses every month for the next year. I don't have the bandwidth. I don't have the mindset. I can't do it. Is there an abbreviated version to keep them at bay? What are your suggestions for the person who isn't OCD like, I am or you are, where we're hitting this thing hard? Mm-hmm. What do you say to that other person that's just like, what are your
also
thoughts?
a very good question. So people find harmony in groups. So, you have your detoxification groups. I have mine, and I post a lot of imagery and information in my groups, and it really keeps people involved. Yeah. it is difficult. But what I do ask them is that, please give me 6 months. Give me 6 months to change your life. You can do anything for 6 months. 3 months isn't going to cut it, because you'll be experiencing heavy detox symptoms between 3 and 4 months. You really need to give your body an opportunity, be a partner with your body to try to get rid of a lot of this stuff, at least go through the brunt of it. And I find that that's about the 6 to 7 month mark. If you can get people to dedicate at least that much time, once they start seeing things and they're feeling things, and you talk to them about their detox symptoms and things that they're going to experience, and then, oh my gosh, they find that you're right, and they see what's coming out of them, they're going to completely flip a switch in most cases. And then I tell them, you can keep going hardcore. I went hardcore for about 19 months before I was able to get rid of all of them. People ask all the time, they're like, so I was hardcore 3 weeks on. Actually, I didn't take 1 week off. I honestly was every single day for 19 months.
Wow.
So I'm ultra.
You're more hardcore than I am.
I'm pretty hardcore.
I needed that 1 week break, boy.
Yeah, I know. And then because and a lot of people need that release. What I was trying to do was a lot like what Dr. Group does. So we will be the citizen scientist, and we will go through whatever we need to go through so that we can give you best case scenario, worst case scenario, right? So I've done that work for you.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't advise people do that. Yeah. I'm just, when the skin started coming off the front of my shins, I doubled down. That's not what I would tell somebody else to do.
Right.
That's just what I did.
Right. Right.
Right. Because it's like, I know that I'm getting rid of so many chemical toxins, plastics, hydrogels, parasites, you name it, the itching, the coughing. I mean, I did multiple interviews at state level and national level, hacking up a storm to where they had to mute me. So it wasn't easy, but I refused to quit. So by and large, people will say either I can't afford it, or, which is completely understandable. I just ask them to do what they can do. Stay on a beginner protocol then, so that your supplies last you a little bit longer, where you're just 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, and just kind of, if you could do that and keep up with that, for a couple of years, that would be amazing. But once people start seeing it, then they think, okay, how is there 1,000 of these inside of me?
Yeah.
That's the biggest question, right? Yeah. Where are they coming from? What Dr. Group and I, the way we very first met is I attended a conference that he was at, and he was standing in the VIP room, and I had never met him before. And I approached him, this was years ago. And I said, I hope you don't think that I'm crazy. I have a very strong microbiology background. So I tried to preface myself like I'm of sound mind and body. But I said, Dr. Group, I believe they've weaponized our microbiome against us. And I believe that E. coli and yeast are manufacturing hybrid organisms inside of us. And I hope you don't think I'm crazy. And he just smiled and winked at me and said, well, I believe you're right. And that really started.
He's been studying this since the 90s.
Exactly.
He was friends with Hulda Clark, one of the OGs. Yeah.
One of the OGs. And so it was really nice that I had an ally. Right. Because so this is more proof for people that I had never seen certain things happening like they were. I mean, I used to teach microbiology to college students and, found out that looking back, I taught wrong. I basically was by the book. I was the system. I was raised by the system. And then I even taught within the system, right? On the bench, on the clinical bench, I would teach. I would teach medical students and pharmacy students and nursing students. I would teach, and then I went to the collegiate level before I, opened up my own pathology lab. So I was raised by the system, and I came at this from a completely different side of things, right? Whenever some sort of a switch flipped, and I got really mad about my entire life and career. That I had been lied to, and that I lied to other people.
I want to know about that switch, because at some point you were red pilled and you were like, oh my God. Can you just share a little bit of that real fast? I mean, we're going to need to do a part 2 because we're not going to get through everything. And I really want to, because your stuff is just riveting to me. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I love talking about parasites.
But we do need to talk about the inorganics and the assault, the Florida fog. So we'll talk about all, we do. We'll have to do a part 2 where I can show you.
Let's do like 2 hours for the next one, because I want to make sure we get everything. And then I want to talk about solutions in the end. And then I want to also, maybe we can do this offline, is talk about some of your products so I can have the whole thing in my place, the whole kit. We've been selling a lot of Dr. Group stuff because I just love it. And I love that you have things that you can pair with it, but then I can bring your stuff in as well, and we can start pumping out these kits, because I know when this airs, I want to make sure it's there and ready for everybody.
100%. There is because of my work with the Global Wellness Forum, what I have been doing for the past 3.5 years is dissecting the technology inside of people. So the hydrogels that I was showing you.
If you can give some words of wisdom one more time to the person going through this parasite cleanse, experiencing extreme pain. It's probably been the biggest hurdle that I've noticed, and I just don't know how to combat it, because I try and encourage them and say, just, pull through, hang on, trust me, what's on the other side is much better. But could you give our viewers some words of wisdom from what you think would give them the most, courage or motivation, and how you think that they can just pull through the pain to get to the other side? Could you give just a few words on that before we go to this part?
Yeah. So I touched on that a little bit when I was talking about the CB2 receptors, alkamides or anandamides, things like that, something that can hit your COX-1 and COX-2 pathway. So those are your main inflammatory pathways. That is what Insulis does. So I purposely use Echinacea purpura in there so that I can hit CB1 and CB2 receptors, and I can hit COX-1 and COX-2, these inflammatory pathways. So whenever you're using something like that, it really does help with the pain. The other thing is that you have to believe that you're going to come out on the other side of this. It's temporary. Every single thing is temporary. And whenever you are removing and exposing the body and releasing these toxins, that's what that toxin binder is for. Sometimes you might want to back off a little bit. Maybe if you're on intermediate protocol, you go back to maybe a beginner so that you can ease into it. Maybe you do another liver flush to open up those excretory pathways a little bit better. There's ways around it. You can slow your roll, if you know what I mean. And if sometimes the pain for some people just is too much, those ropes are probably the nastiest. I've never experienced anything, and I don't want to scare people. It's not like it's pain that you're recovering from surgery or anything like that. It's joint pain, right? It's abdominal discomfort. Whenever they die, they release horrific gases, and you pass them the next morning and everything's beautiful again. Right? It really is very temporary. So if you need a rescue, though, something like a good product that has a good absorbable Echinacea purpura in it specifically, that's your best friend. Maybe increase your binders to absorb some of those toxins.
But don't stop.
Here's the thing is, think of it like this. Think that you're the parasite, you're the bad guy, right? And somebody's just beating the heck out of you and, beat you down. And then all of a sudden they let their foot off the gas. What are you going to do? You're going to run for the hills. You're going to proliferate as fast as you can to make sure that your species survives. So whenever you do that, just know that once they've been found out, they know they've been found out, they fight back. When you release the gas, right, and you put on the brake, they're going to go even harder because they know they've been discovered, right? And that's just a psychological, kind of a preface that I give, to some of my people in the detox group is, this is their body, according to them. You're the host. This is their host. They don't want to be evicted. So they're going to retaliate. That's going to happen. This picture that I have shown you right here. So this is really cool. This is actually urine. And we'll go into this in a different segment, but I just, we were talking about, we're going to talk about solutions next time. We're going to talk about some of the inorganics and the blood contaminants that are in fact parasites. And I'm going to show you some electron microscopy next time, where we can start looking at, can she prove what she's saying? Of course I can. This is what I do, right? And I can show you pictures, and the blood doesn't lie, the stool doesn't lie, the urine doesn't lie, and the way people feel is real. But this is from my Echo Discovery microscope. And what you're seeing here are white blood cells and red blood cells that have been removed. They don't have hemoglobin anymore because they were completely infected by nanoparticles. Completely. So what I've done is I put 3 different fluorescent overlays on top of this picture so that you can see the different metals that are inside of the cells. These are intracellular components. This is from someone who did not receive a vaccine. This is actually my urine.
Wow.
And this is what remediation looks like. Okay. Wow. So when I talk about the nanoparticles that your white blood cells are out there fighting, trying to remove, there are trillions and trillions and trillions of these. They are self-replicatory.
Wow.
Okay. So then, which leads me into a type of solution. Having dissected this over 3 years now, 3.5 years about, I have learned all of the different types of hydrogels and metals and nanoparticles that are being used against us. I don't need to go into every single exact mechanism of the different types of nanoparticles. All I have to do is know how to get rid of them. I don't care what they're there to do. I have isolated what I believe to be biosensors that are growing from within the hydrogels, different structures. And I'll show you, let me show you something.
Wow.
This is really interesting. I'm going to go to my Dropbox so that I can show you this picture kind of as a preface for next time.
You must be like a kid in a candy store with that microscope.
I am.
Those toys.
I am. So this is really, really interesting. This is from my Dropbox transferring images. So this image, let's see, this came up. Okay. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. So this is an example of a hydrogel. And in all of the experimentation that I've done throughout the years, what I have found is there are fibers between the red blood cells. They, through a process that I believe is adsorption, they are gathering energy from the different metals and the particles that are inside of the body, and they form a fibrin type of connection in between the cells that are harvesting energy. I have a fantastic video of this that I'll show you next time because I can see it in real time. And then I was able to put it under the electron microscope and identify the particles that were involved.
Wow.
So I have all of that.
Wow.
This, though, what we can do is we can use...
Which part is the hydrogel? Is it the yellow or is it the one in the center?
This whole center. But see, this is being broken down. And the hydrogels have different micro and nanoparticle constructs that are made of different types of metals that hold the hydrogels in. Some researchers call them lipid bilayers. They might very well be, but they have contaminants inside of them that are helping to hold the hydrogels intact. Through a neutral to slightly alkaline pH, you can remove a lot of these hydrogels. So when people are highly acidic, they're basically just fueling the fire, okay? Wow. So then I used the microscope and I put it in trans monochrome setting. This is the hydrogel breaking down. These are all lipids inside of here, different lipids. And then here's your layer on the outside. Okay. And you can see how they actually harvest from red blood cells. These red blood cells should be properly spaced and electric so that they have proper spacing, and they're not, because this takes their electricity.
Wow.
This is inside of everyone.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. There's not been anybody that I haven't seen hydrogels out of. So then I want to see what kind of material is encompassing these hydrogels. So I put different levels of fluorescence around them. Wow. And when I do an overlay and save that picture, you can see that I've got wavelengths in the red and the blue and the green spectrum. Okay. So this is inorganic material. Without me going into grave detail, all people need to know is that this is inorganic material and it should not be there. And it's harvesting from the blood. Wow. This is happening. This is not just for people who had an injection. And this is just what I did to do the different overlays. Here's your blue, your green, and your red. And then I can save it and do the overlay. There's another picture. This is a broken down polymer hydrogel. This is how they break down. And then here you see the strings or the ribbons that are being found in the blood, right? So we looked at this, and then what I did was I put it under different fluorescence. Here's blue, here's green, and here's red. And the image that I got, maybe I didn't yet, you can see that they fluoresce in different wavelengths here. And so this is also inorganic material. What causes this? Things like, and this is 24 hours later of the hydrogel.
If you're finding this in unvaccinated blood, I can't imagine what you're finding in vaccinated blood.
It's everywhere now. It's literally everywhere. Everyone and everything has these because the nanoparticles don't care.
Wow.
They're inside of food, water. They're being chemtrailed, and we can go into that next time, because what I did was I took all of the components that were in the Florida fog and the Wyoming snow. Then I took and I was able to show every single slide and how they contribute to the function of the hydrogels. So we're being sprayed on purpose because it's proliferating this entire process, the entire process.
And is just the whole purpose of this to decrease our lifespan on here and help depopulate? I mean, what are they, is that what they're doing? Is that their goal, their agenda? Is it truly the idea of basically making us non-human, controlling us, or making us not live? Like what's the summary of why these people are doing this?
They can increase your lifespan by changing you to a biosynthetic organism, and they can completely control you, take away the divinity of the human being, which is to be a self-creating, self-healing, biological being that is electric. So tapping literally into and trying to harvest the soul of the human being, literally. So this is, I read a book called Soul Catcher, and it's basically step by step from the government, from an ex-CIA operative, about how we're coming to this point at this junction right now. And so it is scientific and it is spiritual. Soul Snatcher, I think, is what it is.
Soul Snatcher.
Yeah.
I'll
Soul Snatcher, Soul
I'll look
Catcher,
on Amazon. I need to get this book.
After 24 hours, I left this on the slide. This was the broken down hydrogel. Yeah. So after 24 hours, you see this still remains. But whenever I had fluoresced before, remember, this is really interesting. Whenever I put fluorescence on this before, none of these cells lit up. None of them, right? None of the red blood cells would light up, right?
Yeah.
They're just completely normal. Okay. 24 hours later, look what happened.
Oh my God.
Why? Because I'm right. about what is inside. So whenever I am helping people
Oh my
detox,
God.
and remember, we can't treat, heal, or we can't treat, mitigate, or cure, right? So we're talking about health potential here. So whenever I'm helping people detox, I'm coming from a fully broad spectrum approach, scientific background, because I have been able to isolate these contaminants. I know what they're made of. I understand their nanoparticles. I know what the cores are, and I know what the shells are. Okay. So whenever I look at this and I see that now these cells are lighting up, that could be luciferase. It could be coming from here. And there has been an electric or an electromagnetic frequency or some sort of a frequency mechanism that draws the particles in from wherever they were on the slide, so that they have one goal, and that is to infect all of these cells and harvest from them. So it's important to let the blood sit to see what happens or what comes out of them, right? I didn't see intracellular parasites coming out like I normally might with some, blood samples. What I did see was an incredible infective activity that is now happening. Jeez. From the nanoparticles that are being called to the fight from this apparatus. Now, whenever people break down and release these hydrogels, what I tell them is it's important that you have all of the products. Otherwise, don't bother getting started, because here's the deal. With Dr. Group, we've made it relatively easy for people because it's microsomal. We don't have to take so many pills, right, when we're doing a parasite cleanse anymore. We took out probably 20 pills a day just by making a strong microsomal product, right? Same thing with the heavy metals. We can do that through the microsomal. But what's really important is that when you break these particular things down, they're leaching their contaminants. So you have to grab them. Wow. And can you imagine a liver that is infested with stones and flukes and other types of protozoan parasites trying to excavate all of this garbage? This is one drop of blood, Leila.
Wow.
One drop.
Unbelievable.
So, when I talk about detox to people, it's easy for me to write off anybody who says there's nothing happening. I walk away because I know better. Yeah. This is one drop of blood, an unvaxxed sample. So this is, it's not a crystal. It is made in part of polymer. When I let this sit, now these are not lighting up yet.
What's the blue
thing? Exactly. What is the blue thing? It could be in part made of fibrin. It could be completely inorganic. Cadmium, for instance, fluoresces in this spectrum, but so does luciferase. Luciferase can fluoresce in several different spectrums, but they're using organic material and inorganic material to construct these types of things inside of the body. The nanoparticles come with a payload. These cells are all lighting up because they have been infected, and you can see the takeover in some of these processes. But here, you can clearly see what could actually be one of the sensors. This could actually be one of the frequency devices calling to arms.
Oh my goodness.
Could be. It's not my tech, so I don't know. But based on what I see, this is very plausible.
Wow.
Right? Made up of all kinds of different material. Jeez. And so, yeah, we can I have so much material.
And are you seeing right now, like whenever you look at anybody's blood, are you seeing it more common than not squished together like pancakes versus, let's say, 5 years ago, pre-COVID? Mm-hmm. What are you seeing differently today that you weren't seeing before?
The introduction of the smartphones was our downfall. Yeah, it was the introduction of the smartphones, and then just holding them. just holding them. I had, top of the line iPhone. I was able to work seamlessly. I had my little microcomputer in my hands. And a year ago, I shut it down. I wouldn't even touch it. It's very hard to keep your cells electric and keep your cellular membranes fortified. And I switched it for a Samsung Android. That was the very first line of smartphones that ever came out, because Samsung used a special antenna to direct radiation away from the body.
Wow. They sell those still?
And I don't think they sell them anymore. Because I've had some people write to me and say, Maria, they're not there. They're not there. They're out of stock. And they've been out of stock now for 6 or 7 months. I don't know if they're ever going to come back. But I have it. And so basically it's a 3G, 4G only. I don't even have 5G capabilities on my phone. So it's been difficult to work. But, part of my reason in telling you that, because, we kind of started on solutions. And I worked a little bit with Dr. Group on this, but after analyzing and breaking down all of the tech and understanding their chains, their backbones that were constructing the hydrogels, Dr. Maria Crisler, she did a lot of work on the polymers and polyvinyls and things like this that were in the patents. Right. So I took a little bit of that information, and then I started really digging on the hydrogels, because I've called them enemy number one from 3.5 years ago because of what I saw them doing to the blood. So I did that, broke it down, went after the nanoparticles and the most prevalent types of particles that I believe are in use right now. And I developed an all-in-one product it is a multifunctional, multi-enzymatic, senolytic, cellular supportive, oxidative product on the market that will also help with discomfort. And that is being produced and should be out in 3 weeks.
Oh, I'm so excited.
And I'm calling it Novolytic. I had a big presentation that I did for London, and I had like 100 slides. I got those slides done in a matter of days. I've never worked so focused, had so much energy. It works. I tested it on the blood before and after, and you can see the oxidative processes happening even with lanthanides, which are the rare earth metals that they're using inside of the nanoparticles, because they want LED lighting to influence the activity of the hydrogels, and it does.
Which is probably hence the reason why they're mandating LED lights everywhere.
Right. Yep. But Donald Trump allowed us to have incandescent bulbs again.
The root cause of everything is parasites, toxins and parasites. Yep. Get those damn parasites out. And I get so frustrated with these doctors that that's why I'm asking you certain questions, because I want the researcher, the scientist, to explain it in your words versus this little girl who, who are you? You're not a doctor. Why are you telling me about parasites?
I get the same thing.
But at least you're the scientist. You know what I mean? You're the scientist.
Yeah.
And I know my doctors will listen to the scientist,
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? I did. I even have really great video before and after in the blood from urine.
I was going to ask you that. Yes.
That's all I use on my face.
Yes. Dr. Group drinks it every day. But I was going to also ask you if you have a before and after videos of somebody's cells under a microscope before they started your program and after. Maybe that's something we can show in the next one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Wow, Maria. I mean, just every time I've spoken to you, it's just been riveting conversations. And maybe it's my love of wanting to kill parasites, but I love speaking to you. So Monica is going to book us again for, 2 hours. Monica, just to be safe, book 2.5 hours to be safe, because I want to go as slow and just ask as many questions as possible, because I know for many of our viewers that this is going to be shocking information that they haven't heard or seen before. And because you are a true researcher, you're a scientist, you're somebody who studied parasites. There isn't a better person to ask these questions to. And so I want to make sure it's just so thorough, so complete. And to our viewers, stay tuned for part 2 because we are going to go even deeper.
Solutions.
That's right. And we're going to present you with the solutions because I don't want you to feel like we left you hanging. And we want you to know that the solutions are there and it's possible, and you don't have to feel sick, and you don't have to get cancer and all these diseases that are just taking over what it feels like humanity. We want you to know that there are solutions. There's something you can do about it. Yes, it might be a little bit of work. Yes, it might be some discomfort, maybe even some pain. But to get at the end of the other side is a beautiful place where you feel so much better. And even Maria started this because she was in so much pain when she started. And maybe we can talk about that a little bit in part 2. But same reason why I got into this. I was in a lot of pain. I was just brain fog, Lyme disease, mold, you name it. And doing the part of the parasite cleanse changed my life. 100%. And there's no reason to feel like you are walking dead. So Maria, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's stay tuned for part 2.
I'm excited about part 2.
Yes. And thank you so much. I cannot wait to continue this conversation.